for all posterity. You know, I'll tell you something about these recordings. It's been kind of like a small miracle putting them on Facebook and YouTube, and so many people are beginning to see these things. And I think it's really kind of wonderful. I mean, I don't even belong to Facebook and YouTube and social media stuff, but I just hear about this, and I think it's incredible the response people are having to these talks and the question and answer periods that we have here. So I'm very happy that you all are asking questions. So please go right ahead.
Stuart, I'll ask you about drawing in the energy from the atmosphere into the one point, into the hara, so that it's not mental, the difference to really draw it in energetically. So it's not like the mental idea of drawing it in.
Well, Wendy, it can't be mental because as soon as it becomes mental, you block the whole flow of energy. You encapsulate all that energy in your mind, and then you begin to analyze it, you begin to figure it out, you begin to do all kinds of stuff like that. So it can only come into you through, a deep state of surrender, letting go of, all the trappings of the mind, letting go of the emotional stuff, transforming it into spirit, I mean, look, you have been taught, and everyone here has been taught an exercise that can transform all the things that are difficult inside you, all the emotional and mental problems into energy of balance, of harmony. And you're supposed to use the exercise to do that. And when you use the exercise to do it, you're no longer trying to figure out the cosmos or allowing that energy to come into the mind, but you absorb it deep in the chakra system. It builds foundation inside you. It enables the heart to really open. It enables the throat to open. And that's really the answer to that. Because other than that, if you take it into the head, it's damming up the entire flow and the entire works. It's what I said the other day, and I think I'll repeat it. Look, it's just energy. Everything in this universe is just energy. And what creates the insanity in the world is the confusion, the neurosis, the anxieties that exist in people. That energy flows in and it's transformed into whatever we are. If we're in a state of surrender, if the heart is open, the mind is quiet, that energy flows through us and creates a world around us that is completely filled. It's like a miraculous world that we live in. But if we're all full of our mind, our emotions, our tension, our fear, our insecurity, that's what is projected in light. That's how the energy leaves us and goes into the world. So the whole crux of this meditation, the point of it, please try and sit still. The whole point of it is simply to get free of yourself, to no longer be a servant to your ego, your mind, your tensions, to become nothing inside. And by nothing, I mean letting go of all the things that create chaos inside you. And then that energy will flow through and it will guide your life. It will develop the chakra system. It will connect you with God. It will give you a spiritual life. It will give you your enlightenment. But it needs the help of every human being. And if we don't do the inner work, what comes when that energy enters us, and it always does, we don't get up in the morning without that energy becoming part of our lives. And what comes is what we are. We see exactly in the world what we are. So the work of a human being is to truly get free of themselves. You get free of yourself and it's a flow of energy. It's very beautiful how this works. And people, people are so, caught up and conditioned. I would say not even caught up, conditioned. Please try and sit still. Conditioned to live with all that anxiety, that tension. They don't know anything else. And when the energy comes, that's what manifests. What you see outside yourself is a mirror image of yourself. What you identify with outside yourself is a mirror image of yourself. And if you want to change the external world, you have to change the internal world, because then you begin to see a different world. Once that internal world is changed, you see a whole different reality. So it's never, it's not mental. Mental, you begin to rationalize, you create cubicles of logic, that somehow makes sense to you for a moment, and then 10 minutes later, it's all different already, But that surrender inside, that balance inside, that open to receive spirit inside, that transforms people. I hope it's clear. I always say the universe, everything is energy, everything. And what the universe needs is the help of people to transform their inner lives so they can receive that energy and begin to be guided by that energy. So it helps them work out karma, it helps them have a spiritual life, it helps them just to be able to live with themselves in a conscious way, in a wonderful way, with love, with joy, openness, a lack of fear. But that's the work a person has to do on himself in order to get there. And that's all these classes are about. I mean it, They're not religion, they're not all that stuff, They're about simply getting free of oneself, becoming a happy person. Does anyone else have a question?
So just to follow up, so the breathing exercise and just by putting the attention on the hara is what draws it in, like in
Yes.
that simple form.
Well, it's not what draws it in. What it does is it gets your mind quiet. It gets your emotions quiet. You understand? You are centered in the foundation, in the core of your being. You have opened so you can receive that energy. Meditation is a craft, that's all, And that craft will enable you to open inside to receive that energy.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anyone else have a question they would like to?
I have a question, Stuart, Chris. Stuart, I was reading Ramana Maharshi's writings, and I would like to ask you about something he said. One of his students said, "Master, how should I treat others?" And Ramana Maharshi said, "There are no others." Could you talk about what he meant?
Oh, it's very clear what he meant. It's everything I just spoke about. You understand, look, everybody and everything you see outside yourself reflects your inner life.
Mm-hmm.
And if you find love inside yourself, you find joy inside, you transform your chaos, and then you're going to see other people that way. And there really aren't others, they're just people that are there to remind us of exactly what we have to do to get closer to God. And you treat people according to the amount of openness and centeredness you have in yourself, how deeply your connection is to higher energy, and if that connection is real, he's right, there are no others. It's all one. Now, there are a lot of others because there are a lot of people in this world that function through the mind, and that creates separation. but it doesn't mean that we have to be separate. You understand? Because other people are full of chaos, it doesn't mean we have to be full of chaos.
Mhm.
And it's really easier to deal with their chaos when you're not full of your own chaos. I really mean that.
Yeah.
Much easier to deal with other people when you're not fully yourself.
Thank you very much.
I mean, their stink doesn't have to be our stink, you know? Understand? So there, he's right, there are no others, but there are others when we try to deal with people through the mind. When we try to deal with people through ego, opinion, what we think is right or wrong and all that nonsense, then there are others.
Mhm.
And there's always conflict because there's nobody on this planet that's going to fit into our reality. Understand? We have to be able to open and allow ourselves to be guided by a higher force that accepts every human being as our teacher. Everything that exists here is our teacher. Everything is a manifestation of God. Being a manifestation of God in one way or another, it is teaching us how we can grow in our lives. So then there are no others. There's just God teaching us what we need to learn.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anyone else have a question that would like to?
Stuart?
Yes, I'm here.
Sometimes it can be very challenging to forgive certain people or situations. Maybe we don't want to go into an old wound. And it's that desire to be free, but sometimes we're not quite ready to let go. You know, there's that holding on to that. So can you address that?
Look, the holding on, what you just said is just, I keep talking about this. It's simply a reminder that you haven't arrived yet. I mean, I can tell you, I mean, I've told this story before, but it's kind of a nice story. You know, when I was younger, from the age of about 20 and 25, I used to work in restaurants in New York City. I was, worked as a waiter, bartender, stuff like that. And I worked in one restaurant where I used to work for 2 months, 3 months. I always got fired or I quit. Must have worked in 100 different restaurants in New York City. And I finally, in the last restaurant I worked in, I said, Stuart, if you have to spend the rest of your life being a waiter, you're going to do such an extraordinary job here that you're not going to get fired. And I worked with a great deal of consciousness. It became a whole different experience for me doing that. Not that I like waiting tables, but I knew that I had to learn how to do this to finally get free of it. Well, there was a bartender in that restaurant who I would go and ask him for a whiskey sour or a martini or a scotch on the rocks. And please try and sit still. Please try and sit still. It's really important. And he would we would always get into an argument, always. And I used to hear Rudy talking about, exactly what you asked, I mean, people and your relationship with them and fighting with them and how you have to be able to accept everybody for what they have to teach you. I'll never forget this guy. I couldn't go near him without getting into an argument. So one day I'm standing at the bar. I had nothing to do for a while, and he's talking to one of the waiters about going out and meeting his girlfriend, for a midnight, breakfast or midnight supper or something like that. And I was just astonished that this guy could have a girlfriend. And somebody loved him. Somebody could sleep with him, go home with him at night, be with him. I said, this person must be a saint. They're certainly more evolved than I am. And it changed something in me. Something just clicked inside me that said, Stuart, what are you doing to be getting into an argument with this human being? And all of a sudden I realized, Stuart, it's not him, it's me. I have to change something. And I found and I changed it. And from that point on, I never had an argument again with that guy. In fact, we'd stand there and have long conversations. But I had to find in myself what needed to be changed. And I think that this is an important aspect of living, because it's too easy to blame other people. But other people, as I said earlier, they're just a reminder of exactly who and what we are. We have to change inside. We can't even expect them to change. You can lecture them and argue with them till you're blue in the face, and they're not going to change unless they make the effort to change. But if we change inside and get big enough to be able to communicate with them, then, the next thing is forgiveness. There's nothing to be angry about anymore. And it really doesn't matter, look, I once wrote in a book, it doesn't matter what they did to you, they're your parents. You gotta love them. And it's really the truth. We have to learn to do this in ourselves. And even if that person doesn't change, we will change, we will grow, we become more conscious. We have used, life's teachings to help us get more conscious about the way we live our life every day. And if it's hard to forgive somebody, then it's just telling you that you have a lot of work to do on yourself. And forgiving people doesn't mean you got to spend your life hanging out with them. And it doesn't mean they have to forgive you. All it means is you've gotten big enough not to be irked by them and not to carry this pain in your chest, and you can move on from the situation. I mean, I once had a girlfriend years ago, and I was walking down the street with her, and she was so angry at her mother. She was so angry at her mother because her mother was an alcoholic, and this woman who was my girlfriend when she was younger was an alcoholic. And she blamed it on her mother. And this was going on for years. I mean, I don't remember how old, but it was for a long time. And I looked at her and I said, you're never going to get free of this situation till you just get big enough to forgive your mother. Forgive her. It's like in the Bible, forgive them. They know not what they do. Forgive them. It's one of the greatest things ever written because it allows life to move on. It gets rid of anger. It gets rid of all of that crap, that we carry inside ourselves that keeps us, from ever really growing inside. It doesn't allow us to love. So this whole thing of forgiveness is the key to it. And one has to get big enough inside to be able to do it. And if you can't do it, it's telling you something. Hey, you got a lot of growing to do. And it's all right to have a lot of growing to do, as long as you recognize it. And then do something to develop the consciousness in yourself. It's like, I'm not religious, but who's going to throw the first stone? Who's going to judge somebody else when we ourselves have done so much crap in this world, that we need to be forgiven also, And all of this comes down to one thing. It just equals becoming more human. Learning to be a happy person. Learning to live in this world and to let life be. Because when you finally let life be, it becomes really sacred.
Thank you, Stuart.
You're welcome. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? Okay, there'll be a class again. What is today? Wednesday? I don't even know the day anymore. Tomorrow at 7:30. And again, God bless you all. Thank you for being here, for being part of this, for really, in a sense, helping me to grow. I really appreciate the humility, the fact that the presence of everyone here is certainly making it possible for me to grow in my life. And hopefully you all are growing. I'm grateful for even the financial contributions you make that help out. It's just, there's so much to be grateful for in this life. and seeing every one of you, and finding every one of you in my heart, makes my day worthwhile. So God bless you all for being here. And I hope to see everybody soon, tomorrow. And have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Bless you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.
Thank
Right.
you. Good night.